of Time community, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together, we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time book series. How you doing, Tim?
Doing all right. How about you?
I'm good. Before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the entire series, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. All right, Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
Today we're going to be discussing chapters 53 and 54 of The Dragon Reborn, where Faile is held hostage by the Hedgehog of Doom, and everybody and their mother is on the roof with Matt. Chapter 53 is called A Flow of the Spirit, and the icon is the wolf.
Here's a quick summary to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. Perrin and Faile are running their usual circles around each other when Moraine and Lan intercept them from their scanning mission. Rand is definitely in tear, and Moraine plans on dealing with Be'lel that night. There are whispers in the street about the dragon. She wants Perrin, Faile, and Loyal to head to Tar Valon, where it's safe. Perrin is not a fan of the plan to run away, but Faile thinks it's a great idea, and she rushes off to check the private dining room for Loyal. They hear a thump, and Perrin pushes open the door of the dining room to see that Faile has collapsed. Moraine stops him from charging in after her, and Perrin is suddenly in agony from worry over Faile. Moraine senses the flows of spirit that set the trap, and they see a little wooden hedgehog near Faile's body. Lan brings in the innkeeper, who says that two ladies brought a gift and left it as a surprise. Be'lel found some sisters of the Black Aja to set a trap for Moraine, but the upside is that Be'lel probably thinks that Moraine got caught in his trap, so they've gained the element of surprise. Perrin has been throwing a royal fit over Faile this whole time and demands to know what Moraine is doing to help her. Moraine explains that Faile is sleeping in some sort of enchanted hibernation. The carving is a Tarangril, last studied by Corin Nadil, the last dreamer the tower had. Moraine never studied dreaming, so she doesn't know much else. She thinks Faile is trapped in the world of dreams, and though dreamers usually only send part of themselves into Teleron Riad, Faile is there with her whole self, so if she stays too long, she'll die. The trap will catch anyone who goes into the room, and Moraine has bigger fish to fry. She wants Perrin and Loyal to go north, but Perrin refuses to leave Faile. He's thinking maybe this world of dreams is like the wolf dream. Spoiler alert, it is. Moraine is like, whatevs, dude, try not to die, and goes off to fight the Forsaken with Lan. Loyal comes in and asks what he missed. A lot. Perrin explains, and Loyal has Perrin's back. He agrees to watch over them as Perrin tries to save Faile. He leaps into the room and lands in the wolf dream, dressed as a blacksmith. Hopper meets him and chastises him for being there too fully. Perrin tells Hopper that he needs to save the falcon. Hopper says he could die if he doesn't get out, but Perrin says that if he doesn't save her, then he doesn't care if he dies. He turns into a big wolf with curly fur, and they go off in search of the falcon.
As they're walking back from the forge to the inn, Perrin almost calls Faile instead of Zareen, but he catches himself. He has spent a whole day fumbling anytime she looks at him, to the point that even the blacksmith he's working with notices and gives him side-eye. He's starting to warm up to the idea of her being the falcon in Min's viewing.
Yeah.
And I just want to hit him over the head with that hammer because he's still stupidly fixated on whether or not she could be the woman he's supposed to run from as well.
Yeah.
So he refuses to be anything other than a stubborn mule towards her. Don't get me wrong, I love Perrin, but the dude has issues.
Lots of issues. An interesting thing that I hadn't noticed this time around is that because Be'lel hasn't bothered to shield his dreams about the sword from the people of Tyr, and now everyone's having shared dreams of Rand because he's in the city, there are rumors on the street about the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah.
So when the stone falls at the end of this book, the people were already primed for it, already thinking along the lines of the dragon. Like, I hadn't caught that before.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, like, because they accept that Rand's a dragon super, super fast. I mean, prophecy and yada, yada. But, like, they're all like, oh, the stone fell and there's a dragon banner. Oh, I guess the dragon's been reborn. Like, there's no second guessing.
Yeah.
But
you're right.
I guess
That's
it
weird.
makes sense because they're already kind of primed for it here.
That does make sense why they would accept it so much better.
Yeah. I had not noticed that before at all. I totally skipped over it when Moraine says that.
When Perrin is talking to Moraine about her plan to face Belal, he thinks to himself, there was no fear sent in her. Mm-hmm. I bring this up because it's a great way to show how much of a badass Moraine is in this moment, while at the same time showing how much Perrin is starting to accept his new abilities. He checks Moraine's emotional state based on her smell and accepts what he smells as true. Like, we saw this briefly with Gull, but it will start to become more of a habit from here on out.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or is Perrin being really bratty in this chapter?
It's not just you.
Okay. Yay. Like, he begrudgingly talks about dreaming of Rand at night. He gets all surly with Moraine when she starts to talk about Belal and tells him that they have to leave and let Moraine and Lan deal with the Forsaken. And then makes a snarky comment about how Loyal has plenty to say about us running away in his book. And I get that he's stressed and that he's trying to sort out the existential crisis he's experiencing, but Perrin does not come off good in this chapter, and I just want to call it out for what it is. Since we've been so hard on Egwene, It would be a double standard to ignore Perrin being a surly brat, even if he is one of our favorite characters.
That's true. Yeah, like if we're going to call out Egwene on all her crap, we should probably call out Perrin too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's interesting, and when I say interesting, I think I mean frustrating, that Perrin refuses to call Faile by her chosen name until he sees her lying unconscious on the floor.
Yeah.
He's at odds with her and can't make up his mind about her while she's a strong-willed, albeit rather annoying, hunter of the horn. But the second she becomes a damsel in distress, he falls in love with her and accepts her as his falcon. It's not until she is unconscious and needs to be rescued that Perrin is suddenly desperate for her. Like, it's a trope that a woman has to be seriously harmed or killed before a man comes to his senses and realize like how much he cares for her.
Yeah.
And it's one that I personally could do without. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that Jordan wasn't trying to imply that Faile wasn't worth it to Perrin until she needed him and he could swoop in like a hero to save her. I think he really did try to build their relationship over this book.
Yeah.
I just think he failed at it.
Oh, yes.
You know,
Yes.
like Perrin obviously sparked on her, but this deep, passionate, but she's my soulmate, and if I don't rescue her, I'll die response, like, kind of comes out of nowhere.
It really does. I mean, we get this brief thing in this same chapter. We start to see him, like, fumbling because, you know, she's watching him in the forge.
Yeah.
But that's, like, the first real, like, hardcore sparkingness kind of happening that he's willing to admit
he's got a crush, you know? Like, he's realizing that she's kind of interesting, but he still doesn't know if she's evil, and he's supposed to run away from her.
Right.
And, like, the second she's on the floor, Jordan actually uses the word agony.
Yes,
he's in
he does.
agony over her. And it's like, seriously, dude? Seriously? Just because all of a sudden she's the damsel in distress, we're supposed to accept that he loves her and, like, they're together now? Like, that's stupid. So frustrating. It just, don't like it.
In defense of Jordan, I think what he was trying to go for, and 100% admit that he failed at, is he sees her on the floor and he realizes how stupid he's been. He's been denying all these feelings from the get-go. But it is really lame that he goes from, like, 0 to 60 in a drop of a hat.
And I mean, like I said, I know that it's an established trope for the man to, like, not realize his true feelings until the woman's been, like, raped or murdered or kidnapped by terrorists or whatever.
Right.
But it's like, that's a stupid trope. It's dumb. It's like, it bugs me. It really bothers me. And since we're talking about stupid tropes, we've talked a lot about how Jordan uses the hate to love trope. And I want to say again, I don't automatically hate this trope outright. It works when it's done well, but it's so easy to mess up.
Yes,
you know,
it is.
like
Yeah.
if you look at, say, Pride and Prejudice, which is probably the best example of hate to love done well, Darcy and Lizzie have legitimate reasons for feeling the way they do about each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like,
Yep.
yes, both of them are quick to judge, which leads them to make the wrong conclusions about each other, but they both earn their dislike for each other.
Yes.
For the first half of the story, you know, like they don't hate each other for arbitrary reasons, and they aren't being bratty or difficult for no reason like Perrin and Faile are here. Then, when it's time to flip from hate to love, it's not instantaneous.
Yeah.
You know, like Lizzie and Darcy have to earn their way back to love just as they earned their dislike for each other. They both had to grow and change and realize the mistakes that they each made before they really loved each other. Mm-hmm. But here, Perrin just flips a switch and suddenly Faile's the love of his life. Jordan didn't earn it. The characters didn't change or grow or experience any self-discovery. It's done so poorly. I don't buy it.
And it's such a shame because he does so many things well.
Yeah.
And this not landing home is just so...
Yeah, like...
It's such a disappointment.
When it comes to the romance, he just drops the ball time after time after time. You know, like we talked in The Eye of the World that we totally buy Lan and Nynaeve. Like,
right.
Their romance
Yes.
makes perfect sense, you know? Like, he set up them impressing each other with, like, their skills and like, that beautiful scene where Lan's, like, you know, where Nynaeve kind of bears her soul and Lan's like, I have nothing to give you but a widow's...
bride dress, yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it was done really, really well. But then you turn around and you get, like, Perrin and Faile. It's like, this is so... cheap and lazy and sad, like just
beneath what he's capable of doing.
Yeah, like he's a really good writer and he's able to do something so well, but this is just not one of them. Like their whole relationship, especially at the beginning, it is so unbelievable, you know? Like I think Perrin and Faile's relationship does eventually grow into something that I can go with. Like I don't love it. Mm-hmm. I never love it. But at least I understand, like, okay, like, I get it. They're in love. They're together. Okay, fine. But at first, they're just
it's
not
just a
written
struggle.
well.
It really is.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not even necessarily that they're always in contention with each other. Some people have those relationships. I don't personally understand those relationships, but not every relationship is the same.
Right.
Some people like a challenge in their relationship. Whatever, to each his own. But, like, there's too much contention. You never see the tenderness between them. It's not actually until the next book, in Shadow Rising, and we'll get there, where there's actually moments where they've dropped their guard and they're honest with each other. And then you can see, oh, okay, this is why these people are together. Right. But, like, their entire relationship up to that point is... so poorly written.
It's just all sniping, yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll cover that. We'll definitely cover that in detail when we get there.
Yeah, we will get there. But as far as the Dragon Reborn, their relationship is terrible. And I really think Jordan dropped the ball with them.
Moiraine and Lan have to go after Baal before they lose the element of surprise. Essentially, just leaving Faile to her fate. Mm-hmm. She tells Perrin to grab Loyal and go to Tar Valon, but doesn't give any instruction about Faile. She's got bigger fish to fry. Perrin refuses to leave, and Moiraine is basically like, okay, well, I hope we survive, but I gotta go.
Yeah, what was she gonna do with Faile? Just leave her to die on the inn floor?
Yeah. She like
that's cold.
You know,
I mean, true, like Apocalypse, you know, trying to stop the Forsaken from killing the Dragon Reborn and ending, you know, time itself. Okay, sure, fine.
I don't want to go too deep in.
Like put a blanket over her or something.
Just cover her up and hope no one sees her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to get too deep into that right now because it'll come up again in the next episode. It'll come up again. I promise you.
Does it?
And I kind of want to save that for then. But yeah, like Moiraine is just piecing out and good luck. No, you two need to go to Tar Valon and leave her. Bye.
I still love that Moiraine thinks Tar Valon is safe
right?
for anybody at this point.
Yeah. Jeez.
So, okay, here's why I love Loyal. And I'm just going to quote this whole thing, so prepare.
Please do.
Quote, Perrin was surprised when Loyal growled, "No, Perrin, it is not right. Faile was so free. It's not right to trap her. Perrin peered up at Loyal's face and suddenly remembered the old stories that claimed Ogier were implacable enemies. Loyal's ears had laid back along the sides of his head, and his broad face was hard as an anvil. Loyal, I'm going to try to help Faile, but I'll be helpless myself while I do. Will you guard my back? Loyal raised those huge hands that held books so carefully, and his thick fingers curled as if to crush stone. None will pass me while I live, Perrin, not Myrddraal or the Dark One himself. That is one badass Ogier, and I am 100% here for it.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
It's just a taste, just a little taste of what's to come in the next book, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, Loyal the Warrior is...
Yeah. Like,
kind of scary.
Ogier are amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So good. So very, very good. Like, we talked about how Loyal has been completely wasted this entire book, but
then
this one teeny tiny paragraph, totally worth it.
Yeah. This is why we drug him all through all this.
Pretty much, yeah, for this one teeny tiny paragraph.
There is a little thing that I noticed for the first time this time around when Perrin transforms into young Bull in the dream world.
Okay.
Like, he refers to Hopper as brother. Mm-hmm. It's just a really quick thing that is said in passing, but I really think that this is the turning point where Perrin no longer resists Hopper. Mm-hmm. Like, from here on out, Hopper becomes more of a companion and a teacher to Perrin in the Wolf Dream, instead of this random person who sometimes appears and chastises Perrin for not knowing that what he's doing in the dreams.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, because this is the part where Perrin actually transforms into young Bull properly.
Yes.
Like, I think for the first time.
I think so.
So I do think this is a turning point where he starts to accept that the wolf is part of him, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, he does struggle with it for much, much longer, but not quite to the same degree that he has been struggling with it.
Right.
You know, like, it turns from sort of a outright refusal, like this isn't happening, to a sort of begrudging acceptance.
Yeah, well, it's because he sees what happens with Gnome, and he's so afraid that if he gives 1 inch over to like this thing inside of him, he's going to end up like that and completely insane. And this here is like the first time where he realizes that maybe he can like give into it here in the Wolf Dream. Maybe he doesn't have to like completely deny it, and he just goes with it.
Yeah, and I mean, like we talked about, you mentioned he's starting to rely a little bit more on his sense of smell and trust it. You know, I realize it's been a while because this book has lasted forever. But, I mean, in this book is when we saw Gnome. And in this book, he's, like, not letting himself sleep because he doesn't want to get into the wolf dream. And, like, he's still outright resisting. Like, I don't have to do this. I'm not going to be a wolf brother. Like, I can avoid it. And I think at this point is when he starts to realize that he can't avoid it. Like, it's never going to work. So since he can't avoid it, he needs to learn how to live with it.
Yes.
And I think this is sort of the first step, because he's so desperate to save Faile that he's willing to try anything, including embracing the wolf part of himself. So in the future, you know, from this point on, he's like, okay, I can't get rid of this thing, so what do I do now? You know?
Right. But this is the first time that he actually refers to Hopper as brother.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, this is where he finally accepts Hopper at least.
Yeah.
So yeah. Mm-hmm. That wraps up chapter 53. Chapter 54 is called Into the Stone, and the icon is Matt's dice. Sit back, relax, grab a drink and a snack, because this chapter is a long one and a ton of stuff happens.
Matt has taken to the rooftops, trying to figure out his way into the stone. He arranged all of the fireworks that Eludra gave him in a tight bundle. The side of the stone looks like a cliff, at least 100 paces up before the battlement. Only a fool would try to climb it, but it was the only way Matt had seen in. While he's still eyeing the wall, he sees that some fool already was climbing up the side, and over halfway up already. Suddenly, he felt stale at his throat. Matt knocks it aside and sweeps the legs of his attacker with his quarterstaff, but finds 2 more spear points at his throat. At first, he thinks he has run afoul of thieves and tries to talk his way out of it, but quickly realizes that he's actually facing Ale. They tell Matt that they've been watching him watch the stone, and they want to know what he's doing. Before Matt can answer, they are interrupted by a voice saying that he could ask the same of the rest of them. Julian Sandar introduces himself as a thief catcher and wants to know what everyone is up to. 4 more Ale rise up out of the shadows behind him, bringing their total to 8, plus Matt and Julian, and now they may as well throw a party because it is ridiculous how many people are on the roof. Julian tells them that he did something that he needs to make right. Ruark, spokesman for the Ale, tells Julian that he understands his role as thief catcher because the Ale red shields are similar. They mean the city no harm. They will let him live if he promises not to raise the alarm. Julian agrees, and Ruark turns to Matt, who tries to make a joke only to end up with a spear point again. He tells them that he's trying to rescue some friends being held as prisoners. The Ale accept his answer, and with a final warning not to raise the alarm, they disappear into the night. Alone together now, Matt and Julian quickly realize that they're after the same thing and team up. Julian knows a back way in, and if Matt is willing to trust him, they can pretend that he's a prisoner Julian is leading to the cells. Matt is not in love with this idea, but he can already see the shadows of 100 Ale climbing the stone, so that way is no longer an option. Matt agrees to Julian's plan, but wants to create a diversion first. They cross the rooftops until they reach the city wall, and Matt tells Julian to wait for him. He uses the wall to get to an arrow slit, where he shoves his bundle of fireworks as far as he can. He had cut the fuses so that they were all the same length and tied them together, hoping they would all go off at once, causing a bang and a flash that would draw attention. He lit the fuses and took off, running back to Julian. The roar behind him was louder than anything he'd ever heard in his life. A monstrous fist punched him in the back, knocking all the wind out of him, even before he landed, sprawling on his belly on the wall top, barely holding onto a staff as it swung over the edge. Realizing that he had just blown a hole in the stone, Matt chooses not to go back to Sandar and opts to use his new door instead, forgetting momentarily that he had meant to use the fireworks as a diversion. He is quickly reminded, however, as 10 defenders of the stone appear as soon as he gets inside. Matt gets to work with his quarterstaff, but there are too many of them to handle alone. Luckily, Sandar joins in with his own staff, and they make quick work of the defenders. They both rush off to the cells to save the girls. Egwene wakes in a cell and starts screaming. The other 2 calm her enough so that she can start thinking straight again. She asks if they are still shielded, but realizes it's a stupid question. If Nynaeve could touch the source, she already would have healed them. Nynaeve tells her that they left Amico to guard them, but have not checked on them since tossing them in the cell hours past. Elaine tells her that they said the girls were bait, and Egwene is sure that they're bait for Rand. Elaine thinks that maybe Rand will rescue them, but Nynaeve is concerned about pulling Rand into a trap with them. Egwene discovers that she still has the ring Terangriel and thinks that she may be able to do something in the world of dreams. Sure enough, once in Teleron Riad, Eggs is no longer shielded. She dreams herself to the heart of the stone and finds Joya Baer standing before Kalendor. Eggs cuts her off from the source and binds her with flows of air. They trade threats back and forth, but Egwene obviously has the upper hand here. Joya has been the one who gave Egwene her most recent beating, so Eggs gets a little of her own back, beating the Black Sister with flows of air. She ties off all 3 weaves, but then thinks better of it and releases the one causing the beating. "I am not like you," Egwene said. "This is the 2nd time I have done something like this, and I do not like it. I'm going to have to learn to cut throats instead." With that happy thought, Egwene leaves Joya shielded and bound and goes off to find the cells. Young Bull and Hopper are fighting in the Dreamworld version of the Stone of Tyr. They fight their way to a locked door, and Perrin transforms into a human again. He has a hammer at his side. He shatters the lock with a hammer and finds Faile wrapped in chains on a stone block. He goes to free her, but she disappears. Hopper's like, "Sorry, man, dreams are like that," and Perrin is pissed. Unfortunately, his princess is in another castle, so he goes off to hunt again. The chapter ends with a quick check back in with Matt, who's fighting the High Lords with Sandar, still trying to get down to the cells. We get a quick cameo from the High Lord Darlin, who will be important later. But here, Matt trounces him. We leave him kicking ass, taking names, and still insisting that he is no bloody hero.
When I was in high school, I read a lot of samurai stories, and a lot of my friends were into the anime, though I never really got into it. Like, this rooftop sequence is very reminiscent of a number of hero stories that come out of those traditions. There's a reason that movies like Kung Fu Panda and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon showcase a lot of rooftop action scenes. It's just kind of expected that mystical things happen at night on rooftops in those kind of stories. Remember when I said, as we got introduced to Julian Sandar, that his straw hat reminded me of a samurai?
Mm-hmm.
This just kind of reinforces it for me when we see him on the rooftop at night. Like, for me, Matt is surrounded by desert ninjas and is joined by a staff-wielding samurai, and he seeks to free prisoners from the bad guys who have locked his friends up in a fortress. I guess what I'm really trying to say here is that Jordan didn't just borrow ideas from Western icons like The Lord of the Rings or Greek mythology. I think there's a bit of Miyamoto Musashi here in his work as well.
All right, I'll take your word for it because I never saw samurai movies or like read samurai stories, but I believe you.
Check out the Musashi series if you're interested. It's a fun romp in samurai, just short one story craziness.
Okay. So this whole scene on the rooftops is crazy. I love it, but there are so many people up there.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, so Matt was wigging out about the height of the fall, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then they're fighting and joking and having a full-on discussion like it's nothing. Like, it's so ridiculous, but I do really enjoy it.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that makes Ruark so awesome is his ability to read a situation. Like, he does not know Julian, but he has a good read on him. He knows that Julian is only concentrated with keeping the city safe from thieves and appeals to that sensibility. Mm-hmm. But there's no doubt in your mind as the reader that if Julian does try to raise the alarm and put the Ailes mission in jeopardy, he will be put down before he gets the chance.
Yeah.
And the threat is real even if you don't understand what it means that Ruark says it with his veil on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that even in this super tense situation on the rooftops with veiled ale, Matt is still cheeky.
Yeah.
Saying that he just fancied a walk in the moonlight. I mean, it gets him a spear to the throat, and I think Avienda does pierce his skin, but Matt has style. Quote, very carefully with 2 fingers, he moved her steel away from him. It seemed to him that she laughed softly. Like, he doesn't want to let them see him sweat.
Right.
And I think it goes a long way with them, you know?
Yeah, like, play it off cool. Because this is what an ale would do.
Yeah, they would never blink. So.
Nope.
I love Matt.
Matt has rigged the fireworks so that they all go off at the same time in the bag. Mm-hmm. Like, his goal is to make a distraction, just a really loud noise that will draw defenders away from their position. But because he has no clue of the consequences of what he has done with the black powder, what he actually has created is a shape charge. It's going to cause a blast that bounces off the nearest point of resistance, the wall. And when it does, it's more powerful than the initial explosion. And because the other wall of the arrow slit, aka the window frame, is so close, it's going to cause a ping-pong effect back and forth between the stone because it's so strong. That's why instead of just making noise, he basically creates a hole in the wall where the arrow slit was. Mm-hmm. How do I know this? Well, I grew up in a small desert town, and we may have made similar mistakes, possibly.
Blowing up the desert?
Let's just say you really should not watch Caddyshack and try to get ideas of how to use dynamite to get rid of gophers. Especially when you live in an agricultural community that sells stump remover at the local feed store. And it makes for some great physics lessons.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Matt is such an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, the whole point of setting the fireworks off was to cause a distraction. Mm-hmm. He meant for the defenders to come running so he could sneak in a different way that was left unguarded. And then, as soon as he sees an opening, he runs right into his own diversion.
Yep.
Hello? Like, what was he doing?
I think he was just fascinated at the hole that he just blew in the side of the stone of tear.
I mean, maybe, but like, and he curses himself. He's like, he realized it a second too late. Like, once he gets in, he's like, duh, I planned for this.
Don't.
Dumbass.
You got to hand it to Jordan, though. Because we had that very, very satisfying scene at the start of the book where Matt takes out Galad and Gawain, we know that as Matt faces off against these defenders, he has a good chance of getting out of the situation, even though they have swords. Mm-hmm. And when Julian shows up with his staff, we know that how this is all going to end, with a bunch of swordsmen lying on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Switching POVs to Egwene's perspective, for all the complaining that we've done about Egwene, I really want to take a second to give her credit where it's due.
Okay.
She wakes up totally triggered by her PTSD and is able to rein it in as soon as she realizes that she's not alone and she's not collared. Mm-hmm. She shoves it all down and starts problem solving their situation. This takes a lot of personal courage and a lot of determination. And I just want to acknowledge those elements specifically because we give her such a hard time in this book.
Yeah, for sure.
But I also have to say that sometimes Egwene can be scary. When I read the line, "A woman once showed me a scar she received in Teleran Riyadh, dark friend. What happens here is still real when you awake." I get this shiver down my spine. I don't read this as her being mad or angry. I read her as being filled with cold rage, that kind of quiet threat that you know is not empty. Mm-hmm. And her comment about needing to learn to slash throats just sends the message home.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second.
All right.
Egwene beats Joya as revenge for the beating that she received and ties off the weave. Mm-hmm. She considers walking away, meaning the beating would just continue.
Indefinitely, yeah.
She changes her mind, saying that this is the second time she's done something like this and she doesn't like it. So she's referring to when she attacked Rena after she's freed from the collar, and not even Elaine had to pull her off of the woman.
Right, okay.
So we talked a lot about not letting your trauma change you and turn you into something you don't like back then in that chapter. Mm. And you think that Egwene is going to go that route until she says, I'm going to have to learn to cut throats instead. So on one hand, that's all kinds of messed up.
Yeah.
But then, like, on the other hand, maybe she kind of has a point. I mean, I'm not sure how I feel about it. But regardless, Egwene is a boss in this scene, and she has no problem dealing with this dark friend.
Yeah, there's no disputing that. Yeah.
But I mean, like, it's naive to think that she's never going to have to kill someone. She's dealing with murderers, and
well, that's kind of the point of the learn to slash throats comment, though, isn't it? Like it's one thing to like tie her off with a weave indefinitely. That's going to just pummel.
Right, that's torture.
That is flat out torture. Whereas you're a dark friend, slit your throat, done, walk away.
Right, and like, so one thing that we talked about a lot in the first book, I think, it was the first book, when Matt and Rand get attacked by the woman.
Oh, yeah.
And they decide to leave her tied up. Like, they don't kill her.
And Matt's all for killing her, but Rand
and we talked about,
yeah.
Like, the difference between justice and vengeance. And we talked about when you have authority to mete out punishment and stuff like that. So there are systems in place for people who break the law.
Right.
And, our characters are not part of those systems. So when it comes to, I mean, obviously all of the Black Aja fugitives are dark friends. They're murderers. They're horrible, horrible people who deserve punishment and probably deserve to be killed.
Right.
But is it our character's place to do that? There are laws in place for them to be tried and convicted and yada, yada. But at the same time, because this is apocalypse times, the tower doesn't even admit that the Black Aja exists. Yeah. So do our girls have to work outside those structures? And I mean, they have it thus far.
Right.
But is it naive to say that they won't ever have to? Like, you know, previously, as they've gone on, as all of our characters have gone on their journey, we've kind of sided with it's not really their place to mete out justice because they are not authorities.
Right.
But in this situation where Swan has set the girls out to hunt down the Black Aja, does that give them authority? Has Swan, in essence, like deputized them as law enforcement? You know,
I'm going to say I'm going to answer that question with no. She has not.
Okay.
She has licensed them as her hounds to hunt them and find them, not execute them, not carry out justice.
Like, what was the
locate
plan?
them.
Like, did she say what happens when they find them? What were they supposed to do?
They were supposed to find and report back. They were supposed to locate.
So just like send a pigeon there in tier.
I don't think we had very many details. Well,
How's that supposed to work?
To be completely honest, when Suen has that conversation with them, I don't think she thought they'd ever leave the tower to do so. And then when she actually has to send them out, she doesn't give them any instructions on how to contact her.
Like, what are they supposed to do? Like, was that ever addressed when Suen lets them go? Like, what's the plan?
I don't think there was a plan. There might be a little bit of a plot hole there. But in my mind, like the answer to your question is, I don't think they have the right to just flat out execute these Black Aja. They definitely should detain them, and they should somehow get them either to the nearest sister or take them back to Tarvalon themselves.
Right.
But yeah, like
I mean,
that's
luckily
not their
Moraine
place.
is here. So
but the girls don't know that yet.
They don't know that yet. But, you know, as far as, you know, what happens in this specific situation, they do have an actual sister to sort of take over.
Right.
But, like, you know, when Egwene says, I'm going to have to learn how to slash throats, like, does she have a point? I don't know. Maybe.
Well, my point about the I have to slash throats is that Egwene has to learn how to, like, not give in to let the torture take over and let the revenge take over as torture. She has to figure out ways to take care of the situation. And if that is, this black sister is going to go through and start killing people, kill her. Done. You got to save other people. But that's not the situation yet. I mean, she has the ability to capture her. She should.
Mm-hmm. And she does.
Yeah. And not leave her in endless torment until she is set free from said kind.
Right.
Yeah. My mind goes some dark places there. But that's all I'm trying to say is that no, I stand by our original thing that these girls are not in any place of authority. They're there on behalf of Suan to try to find the Black Aja, but they don't have the authority to kill these sisters.
Interesting. Okay.
I could be wrong. If you disagree, please let us know. But yes, that's my stance.
Okay.
Meanwhile, back at the inn, Piran is trying to save Faile. But to be honest, I'm just not into this part of the action. Like, Piran is basically stuck in a loop, trying to save her from whatever has her bound in the world of dreams. I do like that the hammer materializes as the weapon because I really do think the hammer is a much better symbolic manifestation of who he is. Mm-hmm. It's just as deadly as the axe, but it can be used to do something in addition to killing. I also like that they are both using each other's names for the first time, but the rest of this just seems kind of forced.
Yeah, I don't love this part of the ending. Like, I like the ending of this book, but the Piran Dreamworld section where he's trying to find the Falcon, like, I could do without it. Whatever.
Especially in this chapter. Like, it's a little bit better than the next one, but in this chapter is just, I'm just not into it.
Yeah.
And then we're back with Matt. We started this chapter from his POV, and now we're back to him. The switching is a great way to build the tension, but it does seem kind of jarring after not switching that much in this book. I'm glad that Jordan started trying to work this out because he'll be much better at multiple POVs in the coming books. But coming back to Matt in this chapter may have been pushing it a little bit. What do you think?
I'm okay with it, actually. Jordan was still definitely trying to work the kinks out of multiple POVs, and attempts in previous chapters did not work so well, in my opinion. But I feel like this is the first chapter that he is starting to get the hang of it. It helps that this is the climax and the tension is ratcheted up.
Yeah.
This chapter reads more cinematically, I think, than the rest of the book.
Yeah.
And it works for me. Like, I don't think he did much when he came back to Matt, but I do like that Matt was kind of like bookending the chapter.
Oh, yeah, huh?
So, I don't know. Like, I don't have a problem with that. I don't hate it. I like it. It's fine.
Okay. Matt briefly sees Rand in the stone, but he writes it off as impossible. Oh, and Matt's favorite line that keeps coming up again and again in this series, I am no bloody hero. Keep telling yourself that, Matt. Yeah. Just you keep hanging on to that. That is it for chapters 53 and 54 of The Dragon Reborn. Join us next week to discuss chapters 55 and 56, where the stone falls, the dragon has the sword, and it's prophecies all around.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure you rate and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or whatever your favorite podcatcher might be. If you could leave us a positive review, it would really help us out. It makes us more visible so other people can find us. You can tweet us at WhatPodThru or email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com. Tell us your thoughts on anything we covered today.
That's WOTPODTHRU at gmail.com, or find our Wheel of Time Pod-Thru channel on YouTube. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, do the things. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon.